Our lesson today is all about getting data from the internet. We know that this can be enormously powerful. That's part of why you're in this class. As business professionals and analysts, you'll find yourself in a position at times where you need to collect, for example, the most recent stock numbers and perform some kind of analysis. We know that Python is extremely powerful for analytics, but it also can be used to gather data from the internet. In order to do this, we need to understand several principles relating to web data. First, let's look at some common data types. We can deal with, this is supposed to say CSV files, I'll change that, PDF files, XLS. You've probably seen a lot of these because you've worked with Excel. Web data comes in these common forms: JSON, XML, HTML. This week and into next week, we'll be working with web data. And today specifically, we'll be looking at JSON data. The good news is that Python has libraries for dealing with all of these data types. We just need to get a little better at learning how to use them. There's an important concept involved in the communication that goes on the internet. In order to access data, we need to really understand something called RESTful web services. REST stands for Representational State Transfer. It has to do with a network of web pages connected through links and HTTP commands. We don't need to know about all of these things in depth, but we do need to have some familiarity about them. And HTTP just stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and we can just think of it as the method used. It's kind of like the formatting used to communicate with servers. A server is a network of web pages that are linked together. They hold some data. That's usually where we need to get to in order to derive some data from the internet. When we use the term RESTful web services, we're using that term to mean that the web service conforms to REST standards. So it essentially just follows these protocols and uses these same methods, these HTTP protocol, to access data. So the internet's all about communication between clients and servers are, as I said, interconnected pages that store data. And the most common request, especially for us, is going to be what's called a GET request. So RESTful web services deliver resources to a client. And the client is the web page, the thing that we're looking at usually. And these resources can be any number of things: images, HTML, JSON, and so on. And they're all associated with a URL. So that's like, that's the address. That's where we go looking for this information. That's kind of our starting point. And then an HTTP method is what we are going to do with the data. Are we getting it? Are we adding some new data? And that's what we'll take a look at right here. So let's see an example. We're going to kind of try to unlock the mysteries of the web a little bit. What I'm going to do is go to this popular website, Epicurious, and we're going to look for recipes related to something. And you can feel free to try other examples. I'm going to look for peanut sauce. Okay, so I type in the search terms, I click enter, and usually we look at what comes up right in front of us, right? We see some recipes, we see some articles. And this time, instead of looking at the web page, I want to take a look at the URL. Okay, so let's look at this in a little more clear view. So our URL has changed, and I want to notice that it contains the search terms that we use. Exactly what we typed in. Notice that this %20 is how a space is recognized in a URL. If we wanted to, we could simply have just typed the URL to access the recipes for peanut sauce. But the webpage makes it much easier to just type it into a search field. What this is an example of a RESTful service because it illustrates networked pages. So all of these articles and recipes are pages that are linked to the main page, and when we type our search, we're able to access other pages within this website. So this result was generated using what's called the HTTP GET method. In this example, the data we got back is in the form of HTML, which is the language used to write websites. And it doesn't look like a language, it looks like a bunch of pictures, but here's a little trick. If you right-click anywhere on a web page, this may or may not work for you. Sometimes you have to change your settings, but I can right-click and then look at Inspect. That brings up a side panel with a whole bunch of kind of cluttered looking text, but all of this right here is HTML. And we'll get into this a little bit more in our next class, but just notice that when I say HTML, I'm talking about these, this representation, this kind of formatting, and notice there are these kind of tags. These are called divs. They show different sections in a web page. When we get into web scraping, we'll be doing this a lot more. All right, so that's how we can inspect a page. All right, back to here. So let's see if we can use a Python library. Fortunately, there is a Python library called requests that can perform the actions that we've just illustrated here. So unlike just navigating a website, we actually want to perform the same operations, the GET requests, but we might like to gather the data for ourselves for some other purpose. So we just have to make that connection, and our first step is to import the requests library. And then I'm going to perform this GET request, which was what I did when I typed in those same search terms into the search field. So let's run this. That's one that might take a little time. So you see the star show up. Now there's something called a status code, and I want to draw your attention to this. A status code is kind of a way of communicating when when requests to a server are successful and when they're not. We want to look for one particular code. Basically, we just want a 200 response. That means the request was successful. Does not necessarily mean that we got the data we were looking for. It just means we effectively communicated with the server. So when I run this, I should get a status code. So response.status code is, the status code is something that's part of the requests library. So we're accessing a method within the requests library. Don't think this would work if we hadn't imported requests. So one sort of annoying thing we might have to do sometimes is reformatting the data we get back. And let me go back to our website, and let's just click on Inspect. There's a sort of encoding that's often done in web pages, and we'll see it show up in the header, if I could find it. This one has a lot of stuff in it, but as we scroll through, whole lot of scripts. I should see, I just can't find it. Well, anyway, I should be able to see if this, here it is, meta character set, char set is UTF-8, so that's a particular type of encoding that's done. I think it's just to make data more portable. I would have to look that up to specifically define what this UTF-8 is. It's all about, something about bit strings. Anyway, we just should know we need to look out for that. Okay, so we run that. We're going to decode the data so that it's more easily interpreted by Python. Now, you know what I haven't done yet is I haven't looked at the data. Let's take a look at the data. Run. Should get something back, but it's a big mess. Yep. So this is all the contents of the page, and notice that it's contained within quotes, so it's a string. If I didn't decode this, I would see something else, but I won't go into that too much right now. Now, we know about a function that allows us to find specific strings within a larger string. So because we've decoded this and made it into a string, we can now treat it as one long string, and within that string we can find certain terms. So I encourage you to try this and find other terms, and remember what this find function gives us. It gives us the index of the string. So what we're getting back is that the first occurrence of the word peanut is the 1642nd character on this web page. Okay, so that's our introduction. Here's an exercise to try. See if you can do the same process on the Forbes.com website. And just keep in mind that we're really just at the beginning here. I know we have to be patient, but I hope you can start to see how these tools are going to be useful for us when we're looking for business and financial data. So we'll continue to build our abilities to get closer to that goal.